Mr. Perkins, welcome to the Hoop Collective.
Wendy, appreciate you having me on, my brother. Thank you.
He's joining us from Houston, where he lives. Perk, I don't really want to talk that much about the league right now. You and I do that all day. I want to talk about your career. So, and it's a fascinating one. But when you were a teenager in Houston, you were an absolute stud, right? Like you were, how many points a game did you average as senior year of high school?
So I averaged 29, 16 rebounds, and 9 blocks.
Right.
And I keep telling people, Wendy, you don't just go to the University of Cash without putting up numbers.
Right. So this is the era you could go to the NBA right away, and you did. But before you played in the NBA, you did the AAU circuit, right? And who are some of the teams that you played on out of from where your home was in Houston?
So born and raised in Beaumont, Texas. I played with the Houston Hoops. Majority of my AAU time, I played with Indy Eby and Lanny Smith. Just a few names to throw out there. We played about 4 or 5 years together. I played with the Oakland Soldiers, with LeBron James and Leon Poe. And I played against Bron a lot. It was always the Houston Hoops and the Ohio Shooting Stars that met up in the championships of the AAU tournament, whether it was in Orlando at Disney Worldwide of Sports or whether it was in Vegas or the Boo Williams or the Peace Jam. We always end up meeting up in the championship, and I always came out victorious.
Yeah, I mean, LeBron's team was good, but, with all due respect to my Ohio roots, we didn't produce basketball players like they produced in Texas or in California. The depth wasn't there, just to be fair.
Well, I mean, at the time, no, we wasn't really considered, quote unquote, a basketball state. We always been looked at as a football state. Now, the narrative has started to switch, and we didn't move the goalposts a little bit because I feel like we have taken a huge leap in the basketball space, but we were still trying to, get our feet wet a little bit in that basketball area too and make our mark, for us being, Texas boys.
So I want to talk to you about the Soldiers. I know you've talked about this your whole life. I remember coming to talk. See, back when you were a player, I call it soul patch Perk. When you had the soul patch.
Yeah.
Before you had, you sent out a vibe like, stay away from me, media. Mm-hmm. And I always talk to people because I started covering the NBA 2003. That was the year you came in. And people would be like, oh my God, Kendrick Perkins is one of the greatest guys in the NBA. I love this guy. Your reputation as a teammate was untouchable. But I watched you play and you were throwing dudes around. And then I would come in the locker room and you were not to be messed with. And, soul patch Perk. I remember I come and ask you about the Oakland Soldiers and you didn't want to talk about it. It was like 2007. But anyway, Oakland Soldiers, there's a great story I remember Leon Poe told me. Leon Poe went to Cal, played in the NBA, played with you with the Celtics, I think, right?
Yeah.
He was regarded as the best 16-year-old in the country, I think, at the 15 or 16-year-old.
Yeah, that might be cap, but go ahead, Wendy.
Okay, all right. Well, it turned out to be, no offense to Leon, who's a great guy.
Yeah.
So Leon's ranked the number one 15 or 16-year-old, whatever it is, whatever recruiting service it is. So I don't know if you played this weekend, but LeBron comes out when he's 16 to play for a weekend with the Oakland Soldiers. I don't know where you were. Calvin Andrews was the coach of the team. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Who's
now an agent, was Carmelo's agent for a long time. So anyway, he plays against LeBron this weekend or with LeBron, and LeBron looks good, right? And he gets in the car and he is driving home with, I think maybe Calvin was taking him home or maybe somebody else. And he goes, hey, how old was that kid? And he goes, he's 16, Leon. Leon was 16. And Leon's like, oh, I don't think I'm going to be the number one prospect.
It didn't take long. It didn't take long. And you know what's crazy about the crazy thing about Bron was this, Wendy. He went from always having a little height, right? But he was kind of wiry, right? Like his limbs, he wasn't. And then all of a sudden, it was a transition period. I don't know that happened between the ages of 14 and 15, where he probably went from weighing $185 to like 230. And you was like, who is this man child? Like, seriously.
Yeah. And well, he didn't lift weights till he was 16, Perk.
Yeah.
I don't know when you started lifting weights, but so you were an absolute stud. What were your choices when you were a senior in high school? What were you seriously looking at?
So I had so many college letters coming to my house, like every day. And before my senior year, my high school coach and I, we sat down, we was like, look, we got to get this out the way. Like, we got to just focus on basketball. Now, my whole intentions was going to the NBA. All right. I just didn't tell nobody that, but I had it in my mind. Once the scouts started driving down the country, Beaumont, Texas, and I'm seeing Sam Presti and BJ Armstrong at my game sitting at the desk right by the doorway, I was like, oh, okay, it's real. But I had narrowed it down to North Carolina, which it was Coach Brad Daugherty there at the time, UT.
Matt Daugherty.
Matt Daugherty, UT, Miami, and Memphis. And I went to Miami, and I remember I had a ball, right? And I was like, okay, cool, I might commit here. And I went to UT, and UT, Rick Barnes was like, look, I'm telling you, I could make you one and done. We got the best weight program. I'm telling you, this is what you need. You right at home. I'm like, okay, cool. But then all of a sudden, Cal sent that private jet to Beaumont to pick me up.
Is that right?
Yeah, my first time ever on a private jet. And he sent the private jet there, and I got there, and it was just me. It was just me on the private, and it was an experience that I never had. And when I touched down in Memphis, I went there for 2 days. Best experience ever. Here's the thing that Cal told me that made me commit and sign with Memphis. He said, Perk, I don't want you here for 2 years. I only want you here for 1. And right now they got you projected late first round, early second round. I'm going to make you a lottery pick. That was enough in itself, because that told me that he had my best interest. Now, whatever he was going to get out of me that 1 year, he was going to maximize it, but he didn't want me there for a long period of time. So I was sold. And I instantly signed and I committed to Memphis. It was a package deal. I actually took my teammate of mine who's on my high school team, Keenan Young. He went off to play at BYU, but it was a package deal. We both signed together. And my whole thing was that I wanted to sign and commit just so that schools could stop sending me letters.
Yeah. And did he send you back on the private jet or just there on the private jet?
No, both. I went there on the private and came back on the private. That's
pretty sweet. You know, Matt Daugherty, I've told the story in the pod before years ago. Sagana Diop, you know Ghana Diop, you played against him. So he was playing he came out a year before you. He was playing at Oak Hill. And he had committed to North Carolina. I don't know if he had signed, but it's interesting. He made the same promise. So Ghana told me this story. Matt Daugherty comes out to Oak Hill, which is in the middle of nowhere, Virginia, in the mountains. And he says the same thing to him. He goes, he knew Ghana was likely to go to the NBA. And so he's like, hey, listen, come to North Carolina, play for 1 year. And instead of being the 27th pick, like you're projected, you could be top lottery. Mm-hmm. He pulls out this piece of paper, Perk, and he shows Ghana what the guarantee was for the 27th pick, which was like 3 years and like $5 million total. And then he shows him what the projection was for like the 6th pick.
Right.
Which was like 3 years and like 15, something like a lot more. And Ghana, who's from Senegal, okay, he sees that he was guaranteed. He didn't understand that he was going to be guaranteed $5 million being the 27th pick. And he said he saw that piece of paper, was like, you mean I'm going to be guaranteed $5 million even if I'm taken late in the first round? Decommit. I'm going to the NBA. Totally backfired. And he ended up getting picked 8th and made his money. But so you were a stud. So I remember you get drafted. I remember going to the summer league that they had in Boston. So you are a king at that point. You are a Celtic. What spot did you get picked at?
So I got drafted at the 27th spot. By the
okay, 27th.
Yep.
Okay. And so you end up in Boston. They traded you. I don't remember. They traded you to Boston?
Yeah, they traded me to Boston. So what happened was Boston wanted Marcus Banks so bad. Boston had the 16th and 20th pick, but the Seattle Supersonics had the 14th pick. They were going to take Marcus Banks. So what Danny did was he did a swap with Memphis, who had the 13th and 27th pick. And Danny took his guys and they took Danny guys, and they just made the trade so that he could get Marcus Banks and me, of course.
Those are two different sized individuals, you and Marcus Banks.
Yeah.
You're a foot taller than Marcus Banks. So I remember this summer league, Perk, and they called you Baby Shaq. You probably listened to that your whole life. There's 10 people called Baby Shaq, but like there was a lot of excitement around you because that many people were that size and could move that well. And you know, when you came in from being like this dominating player, did you think you were going to be a dominating NBA player? Like you'd average 20 and 10 in the NBA too?
You know what? I didn't. And it took, at first I had aspirations. I said, you know what? I'm about to work hard. I'm going to make a couple all-star games. And then all of a sudden, after summer league, I met Jim O'Brien, which was the realest, right? Like he was just so real. And he was real about everything about my game, for us telling me who I was as an individual. And as a young guy, you don't want to hear that, right? And so anyway, Jim ended up getting fired. And then all of a sudden, Doc Rivers came in. And it was Doc Rivers actually echoed the same thing that Jim O'Brien said. He said, right, Perkins, you could try to go and make all-star teams and all that, but that's not who you are. Now, you could be the best version of Perk. That's a role player, setting screens, rebounding, blocking shots, finishing at the basket. You'll have a long career and make a lot of money. But if you don't, I don't know what's going to happen with you. So once I heard that from two people, like I had to accept that. Two coaches that were stamped, that been around the league, that played in the league, history in the league, and told me that, hey, I had to listen, Wendy.
But that's something I see guys who have to make especially a guy who was that young. Now, if you'd been through the college and you'd kind of seen in college what your role might be, I could kind of get it more. But you were like untouchable. Like you were like all for years, like the best high school players. You know, your highlights were, you know, being seen around on the early parts of the internet. It still had to be kind of hard to accept that, to go from a guy who was the centerpiece of everything to be like, hey, go be do the dirty work.
It was, Wendy, but let me tell you the thing, and this is why I always say this, it matters what organization you go to, because I had a great group of vets. Along with the coaches that I had a great group of vets, and that matters because I had Walter McCarty, Tony Delk, Tony Battie, Eric Williams. Like, those were guys that took me under their wing, but actually like Mark Blunt, that actually like kept it real with me. And then, you know, for me, Wendy, to be honest, it's crazy because once I got to the league, it was like, okay, how do I just stay here? How do I find my niche?
Yeah.
And the best thing that happened for me was this. I didn't play my entire first year. That was the best thing that happened for me because I was able to learn. I was able to work on my game. And I always tell people this. This is why the rule is so dumb that guys cannot come out of high school. Nothing gets you ready for the NBA like being in the NBA. I don't care if you're not playing. Nothing gets you ready for the NBA like being in the NBA locker room. Period. You learn so much, you learn the game. Now it's on you to soak in the knowledge, but I done seen so many guys go 3-4 years of college and only have 2-year careers because they just couldn't get it.
Yeah. So what was it like to be an 18, 19-year-old with all those vets and Paul Pierce and Antoine Walker, guys who were known for having some fun off the court?
Well, you know what? It was different for me, Wendy. It was different because I was more of a guy that was a country guy from Beaumont, so everything was new to me, period. Raised by my grandparents. Mom was shot and killed when I was 5 years old. driving across. I was so country, I didn't even know about shipping cars at the time. I literally drove across country. I drove to Boston from Beaumont. That's how I got to Boston and got my truck there. And when I
You were driving a pickup truck across Boston. There's not that many pickup trucks in Boston.
Yeah, around across the country. And this is using a map because we didn't have, navigation
Right.
at the time. So when I got there, I mean, it was just more so, I was, like I said, my vets, they live by the motto, it wasn't what you do, it's how you do it. So did they party? Absolutely. Did they have fun? Absolutely. But they also got their work in. And I was able to watch the balance and see the mixture of both. Because remember, all those guys played 10 plus years in the league. So, they knew how to manage. They knew what to do. They knew when to get their rest. They knew what cities they was going to go out in. They knew everything. And all I did was watch and be a great rookie. And I wasn't disobedient. If they asked me to run to the liquor store at 1 o'clock in the morning, knowing that I wasn't going to find a liquor store, damn it, I done it. If they asked me to have this on the road, I had it. If they asked me to iron their clothes, I had it. And it worked out for me because they just kept giving me so much game along with tips that I was just soaking it all in.
Yeah. So what were the rookie duties? Was that donuts at shoot-arounds? What were your normal rookie duties?
So with Mark Blunt and Tony Battie, it was coffee. With Eric Williams, it was other things that I had to have for him. It was a must. For Eric Williams also, I had to make sure his clothes were ironed, and I couldn't send him down to get pressed. I had to do it myself.
He trusted you. I'd rather send it down. I don't trust a kid from Texas.
Yeah, but it was part of the rookie duties. And I also had to bring the balls everywhere, the basketballs. I had to make sure the balls were there. I had to make sure I was the last person to eat on the plane, just little things like that. And then, whatever, if they would call me, I had to be available 24 hours. Like it was Perkins concierge service, 24 hours. I might get paid, I might not, but I had to be available.
All right. So your role grew. You eventually grew into a starter. But I want to talk about that summer because you should read the book. The book's got everything, especially stuff from your childhood, which you referenced the tragedy you went through. I don't want to talk about it in this pod, Perk, because it's hard. But you should read the book because it tells you a lot about how Perk is who he is. Your grandparents, your grandparents you are who you are because of your grandparents.
Absolutely.
If I'm not mistaken. So you're in the league like 4 or 5 years. You established yourself. Think you got a contract, right? Like you got a second contract. And then all of a sudden in like 5 days, you find out Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen are coming to your team. Mm-hmm. Tell me about that summer and then that training camp.
So one, I did not care about the trade. I was too young to even realize that it was about a championship and what I was getting myself into. Al Jefferson and I were best friends. I thought that the Celtics had their power forward and center sold up, and I thought me and Al was going to play together for years and years and years. I couldn't understand it. When Doc Rivers told me Al was traded, I cried like a baby. I didn't care about KG. I didn't give a damn about none of that, what was going on. To like a week later, I just kept seeing it pop up on TV, and people like, man, do you understand what's about to happen? And I'm like, nah. It's like, bro, y'all championship contender. Like, it's the Celtics. Whoop. I'm like, man, listen. All right, cool. And me and KG already had a horrible history.
Okay, what was that? I don't remember that.
Okay, so when he was in Minnesota, when I first started playing in Boston, me and him used to go at it. Like, I'm talking about like nose to nose, like, hey, like, I want to see you in the back locker room type energy, right? And so KG actually told Paul, like, bro, before I come into this locker room, like, hey man, like, what's up with your boy Perk, man? Like, I ain't trying to get how he talk. I ain't trying to get it.
You're doing a little impression right now.
Yeah, I ain't trying to get in there, man, and I ain't trying. What's up with dude? Like,
by the way, with all due respect to KG, I'm backing you in that fight in the back.
Yeah, for sure. He
okay, just to be clear.
And so P like, man, you gonna love Big Perk, man, because P already put me to the test a few times. Like one time he was just like, it was the rookies, and he was like, I got $1,500. Anybody who want it? It was like 12 inches of snow outside. He was like, one of these rookies step up. It was me, Marcus Banks, and Brandon Hunter. He was like, which one go step up? I need 100 push-ups in the snow in your tights for the 1,500. I ran out there, knocked out the 100 push-ups, grabbed my. He was like, that's what I'm talking about. He want to be here. So P already had loved me. Paul loved me from the jump. So we went to London, to Rome, and the whole ride there, KG didn't say a word to me, and I didn't say a word to him. The start of the training camp, he didn't say a word to me. I didn't say a word to him. Now we're playing together alongside each other on the floor.
Right. That's the 4-5.
Yeah. It took our first preseason game for KG to come up to me and say, I'm rocking with you. And our first preseason game was against Bayani and Chris Bosh. And KG went out there and he had a double-double. I had 12, 8, and 4 blocks, and we just anchored the defense. And since then, he just like, I was his little brother from there on out. Like, he was like, nah, Perk riding. I'm with him. Like, you know what I'm saying? Man, I ain't know what to think about you. I ain't know if I had to put these hands on you or what. I'm like, nah, I'm cool, big fella. I'm cool, man. And ever since then, he just took me under his wing.
So, like, that's the thing. Like, that training camp is kind of legendary, the way you guys bonded and Ubuntu and all that stuff. Like, look, the personalities in that team were wild. So you have Paul Pierce. Everybody knows how he is.
Yeah.
You had you, who, the world has learned how Perk is since you came on TV.
Right.
KG, infamous for running his mouth. Ray Allen, who's a maniac, right?
Yes.
Just a maniac.
Yes.
Just so focused on the process. And hello, Rondo. One of the most unique personalities we've seen in the last 20 years.
Right.
Rondo. What a group. And you guys came together like that. You guys were like a dominating force like that. Nobody could score on you. You
know why? Because I think we could all agree that on that team, KG was the best player, right? No disrespect to Paul or Ray, both of them Hall of Famers. But KG, I remember, he set the tone before we got on the plane to go to Rome. And he said, Doc, run this offense through Paul and Ray. If you need me, I'm here. I'm the third option. I'm going to worry about anchoring this defense. And right there, for him to set the tone in front of everybody, that set the tone for the season. True story. So everybody had to buy in at that point. Once KG said that verbally, it wasn't a whisper, no, he said it out loud and he stood by it. So once he did that, everybody else had to fall in line. But I'm going to tell you, Wendy, the best thing happened for us was us going 3 weeks, to Rome and London, because what ended up happening was we were forced to bond with each other. We didn't have TVs in our room, so we didn't want to stay in there all day. So it forced you to interact outside of the lines. And Doc canceled so many practices because we was going hard anyway. So we didn't have nothing to do besides kicking with each other.
Yeah. I just remember, people forget KG. Now he's remembered as being like this defensive beast. That dude led the league in scoring when he was in Minnesota. Yeah. When he won the MVP, I think he led the league in scoring and rebounding at the same time. And if he didn't lead in both, he was one and two in the other.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.